Hey up. Right, this here Royal Enfield Interceptor 865 conversion from Hitchcock's motorcycles. Where do I start? I agreed to test this bike with sceptical eyes. As you know, if you follow this channel, I have certain tastes and certain viewpoints on motorcycles. Hooliganistic behaviour from motorcycles over the years have brought motorcycling into disrepute, and I've tried in my own way over the years to reverse that as much as I can. And make no mistake, this conversion turns the Interceptor into a hooligan's motorcycle. And in that vein, to me, it doesn't fit within the remit of this channel, and I've resisted testing this bike for well over a year, despite requests from Hitchcocks and requests from viewers. And to be honest, this conversion on the Interceptor has been done to death here on YouTube, so I didn't really see the point. But I finally gave in to the pressure and, agreed to give it a go. Now, let's just get the technical specs out of the way first. This is a Euro 4, I believe, Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. Now, the 865cc capacity has been achieved using the S&S oversized piston and liners kit. Now, Hitchcock's told me that they take a brand new cylinder barrel and machine it to size and then press the new oversized liners in so that the customer can just buy this as a bolt-on item. Now, that's not the way that the original 865 kit is supplied, and obviously it pushes the cost up somewhat. But Hitchcocks do also supply the basic kit if the customer wants to, get the machining, etc. done himself, in an attempt to keep the costs down. Now, I'm not going to discuss the costs in this video. You'll have to go to Hitchcock's and have a look through their catalogue. But that's not all there is to this particular bike. It's also been fitted with Hitchcock's own British-made Stage 2 camshaft. To help the bike breathe better, it's been fitted with a DNA Stage 2 filter kit and Hitchcock's own Enfield Precision free flow exhaust system. Now, these modifications alone gave the ECU a nervous breakdown, so in addition to that, an appropriately mapped power commander had to be integrated into the system, which created another problem. You see, the standard bike at the back wheel produces about 40 horsepower with 36 foot-pounds of torque. After these modifications, the power at the rear wheel was raised to 65 horsepower with a peak torque of 62 foot-pounds. Now, I know to a lot of people that won't seem very impressive, and I'll get onto that later on. But the problem was the standard clutch couldn't cope with it, so the clutch also had to be upgraded to a heavy-duty item. Now, I should make it clear at this point that this conversion was engineered and designed in a collaboration between Royal Enfield and S&S Performance. And because of that, we can take it that the running gear, the chassis and the other components in the engine are perfectly capable of handling this additional power and performance safely. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. What I actually mean is the additional performance and power shouldn't cause any harmful stress to the other components of the motorcycle. From a rider's point of view, this bike is perfectly capable of getting you into an awful lot of trouble if you don't treat it with some respect. Now, you might notice, looking at this video, that the handlebars are slightly twisted on this bike. This bike is a test mule. It's not meant to look pretty, it's simply a platform for testing parts and accessories. Now, all the speed limits in the area surrounding Hitchcock's shop are 40 mile an hour and 50 mile an hour zones. And I will not intentionally break speed limits on any bike tests, so I was limited to sort of testing its mid-range capabilities within the constraints of the prevailing speed limits. Now, initially, this was a bit of a strange experience. As you know, I have a Euro 4 spec Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 at home. Everything felt very familiar in some ways, but in other ways it all felt very alien. For a start, the increased size of the pistons meant that there was a little bit of vibration that doesn't exist on the standard 650. It wasn't bad, it was a sort of a powerful rumble that you don't get with the standard bike. In a way, it actually felt quite satisfying. But there's also a lot more mechanical noise from the engine that you don't get with the standard bike, and I put that down to the upgraded clutch. The noise is certainly not present on the standard machine, not my machine anyway, and it was definitely coming from the vicinity of the clutch cover. Now, I will play a section of footage later on where you can listen to it properly, but for now, I'll continue talking. Now, being used to the standard 650, you sort of know what's what from a performance point of view. Like Dr. Jekyll, the standard bike is a relatively mild-mannered machine. Under hard acceleration, it will reward you with some thrills, but it does it in a predictable, progressive way. There are no nasty surprises. It's fun without being frightening. But the modifications that Hitchcocks have applied to this bike turn it well and truly into Mr. Hyde. The same throttle treatment that you might use on the 650 on the 865 turns it into a bit of an animal. It's quite snatchy and snarly. You can feel the rear suspension squat down as it fights against the torque, and very little provocation is required to make the front end of the bike feel a bit light. In fact, so light on a couple of occasions it caught me out, and the front wheel actually left the ground, and that's in third and fourth gear under medium throttle. Having said that, the running gear and the chassis didn't lose the composure. There's no sign of flexing, but of course the chassis was designed by Harris Performance, so you can expect that it's over-engineered. Now, 65 horsepower at the back wheel doesn't sound like an awful lot, and I didn't expect this tendency to wheelie. I've owned and ridden bikes with twice the power output of this Royal Enfield that, to be honest, never felt this lively. But a lot of high-powered machines these days are fitted with traction control, which will retard engine output in order to keep everything under control. The Interceptor doesn't have traction control, so you get your full quota of unbridled horses directly to your back tyre without any electronic interference. A handful of throttle in third or fourth gear at 40 miles an hour, sort of around 4,000 revs, will lift the front wheel off the road. Trying to preempt some questions here. I know a lot of people probably ask me if the brakes will need upgrading to sort of cope with this power. No, they won't. Braking performance doesn't have to be increased to match engine performance. The brakes are perfectly adequate. And if a rider was to find that they were not, I think that would say more about the rider's skills than the specification of the bike. The kind of acceleration this bike is capable of is, I have to say, invigorating. And as a package, it certainly feels like it has a lot more poke than my T120, despite having a few less horses. Steering characteristics under acceleration are slightly different to the standard bike, but you would expect that. It's certainly not twitchy, and there's no tendency to wobble that I could detect. Having said that, a steering damper might be a good idea. That's just my opinion. The OEM Pirelli Phantoms handled the power just fine, but that's not surprising. They're fitted as OEM equipment on a lot of far more powerful bikes than this. Well up to the job, so there's no real need to swap the tyres. I did notice that the gearbox was a little bit sticky at times on this bike. It wasn't bad, and I suspected what the problem might be. And I checked with Dan at Hitchcock's when I returned the bike. The oil in this bike is over a couple of years old, so I'll stick my neck out and predict that an oil change will rectify that. Right, so final conclusion coming up. I'll let you listen to, let's say, a minute of riding footage with sound. just to give you an idea of the glorious exhaust note from this bike, and then I'll sum up and let you go. So right, that was a bit of sedate riding there once I'd got the hang of how this bike reacts. Because of course you don't have to ride this bike like a hooligan, but then if you don't, what's it for? Well, I would say that this conversion is for the enthusiast, it's not for your average rider. Obviously carrying out modifications like this to any vehicle is going to shoot your warranty down in flames, along with your statutory rights. But the Interceptor has been out long enough now for some perhaps reasonably priced second-hand examples to be available on the market. You're not going to get a cheap used Interceptor on the second-hand market because they hold the prices very well, but you could probably make a reasonable saving. An accomplished engineer with all the equipment at home could possibly carry out this conversion for under £2,000. Your average guy on the street that would probably have to rely on a professional to do this work for them is going to spend considerably more. I think probably thick end of 3,000. So whichever way you look at it, even if you manage to pick a second-hand example up for about 4,500, you're still looking at the thick end of 8 grand. And for that sort of money, there are plenty of similarly or even more powerful bikes on the market that you can buy new without having to mess around. So financially, this setup doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Certainly wouldn't be for me. But I know from my experience of the motorcycle community built up over the years that there are guys out there that just thrive on projects like this. This bike would be fantastic for anybody that sort of indulges in frequent track days, especially if they have the mechanical skills and equipment to do this kind of work themselves. So there's no way that this is going to be a popular upgrade for all Interceptor owners. It's going to be the preserve of a unique few. Dedicated customizers and tinkerers. This review, as you know, was a reluctant review, and I do admit that when I agreed to do it I was rolling my eyes at the same time. But in the end I did enjoy it, because one thing that this conversion did demonstrate to me was the quality of mechanical engineering that these bikes possess. The standard components of this bike took all that extra power and punishment in the stride without complaint and without any cause for concern, which is a testament to the effort and research that Royal Enfield put into these bikes when they designed and built them. Right, once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and consider subscribing to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. I am of course going to be back next week, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.